Orsola online, who's our next speaker. Here she is. Orsola, thank you for participating in this. I've had the pleasure of knowing Orsola for many years. I think I wrote about her label from somewhere way back in 2010 in my first book on eco-fashion, or called eco-fashion. I knew her through Estethica, through Fashion Revolution, and more recently, she's found her way back to, I think, what is her first love, which is rescuing and embellishing damaged clothing. So, Orsola, thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually going to read a little bit. I'm a little bit tired. I come from straight from a big project with UNIDO in Morocco. So, but for me, it was always about my love for clothes. I was interested in everything about them, from what they looked like to how I could make them look like on me, because I always knew that clothes are only half of the equation and my person provides the rest. So my journey has been a metaphorical exploration of this relationship, imagining way more than how my dresses sit on my skin to include how them being on my skin affects everything else. Imagining a supply chain long before I knew that there was one. Imagining their afterlife way before I knew it was important. Out of this innate understanding, I built my own career. Firstly, as an upcycling fashion designer, my label, which I started in 1997, ran until 2013. And during its lifetime, even though I didn't really know it at the time, we really were one of the pioneers. And yes, Sas, thank you. Thank you for digging us out of our own obscurity. And basically, we were reclaiming and reusing at scale from post and pre-consumer waste. So we were a successful, sustainable brand. And what followed for me made kind of sense was to give others the same opportunities we had, which is what we did via Estethica, the sustainable fashion showcase I created for the British Fashion Council within the heart of London Fashion Week, and which helped to launch, spotlight and support the careers of many of the sustainable brands that we know and love today. This in turn was followed by Fashion Revolution, which I co-founded in 2013, and which took the fashion world by storm when we officially launched on the 24th of April, 2014, exactly 1 year after the Rana Plaza disaster. Fashion Revolution is now arguably the biggest fashion activism movement in the world, with a presence and some amazing teams in over 80 countries worldwide, each hub working both together and separately to raise awareness and improve conditions locally and globally for a clean and fair fashion industry. As well as co-founder, as creative director, I was responsible, no coincidence there, for how we looked like, what we spoke about and how, and our overall presence and mission, our persona, so to speak. And I'm of course really proud that we struck so many chords. According to online figures, our Who Made My Clothes campaign has reached hundreds of millions of people since its inception. And our FTI is still regarded as a seminal industry tool to measure brands' commitment to transparency and public disclosure. And then 1 year ago, I left the day-to-day, I'm now on an advisory board, and took another big jump into the unknown. And yes, as Sas says, I'm actually back into the Narnia that is my own wardrobe. And why? So the official reason is that I wanted to make space for others, which I did, decentralize and ensure that the future of the organization I founded is as varied and inclusive as possible. But the unofficial reason is because after years of watching the sunset, so to speak, after looking at all the things that need to go away, all I want is to witness the dawn of all the things that could be happening if only we let them, because we don't, or better, the present system doesn't. The reluctance to change on behalf of the biggest brands is legendary and on repeat. Greenwashing is rife. Bullshit and lies are at the order of the day. few examples. Another white man, creative director at Caring Group. H&M and other fast fashion brands selling secondhand. Naomi Campbell for PLT. Courtney for Boohoo. I mean, I really could, whatever. I could go on and on. I'm not. Because when I started the journey into activism, I really believed that we would influence the mainstream, while precisely the opposite has happened. An industry that is completely not collaborative, the word collaboration, I think it's probably the biggest greenwash of all, has interfered with us, precisely the ones who were born as antagonism, and rendered this space one full of rivalry. And now small organizations are competing against each other for crumbs of funding, which we are supposed to obtain, immense feats of prowess. There are so many examples of this all over. Big unsustainable brand takes small sustainable organization with something impossible, tasked to do something impossible, but looks good on social media. Small sustainable organization struggles, fails, and then is lambasted both by the mainstream and by their own peers, while the big brand, it's so big it doesn't matter. Or another thing we see regularly is small sustainable brand does amazing things, breaks new ground. Big brand offers a pretend collaboration, cannibalizes everything and learns nothing. Now that means that the small brand is decimated, the big brand looks good, sales increase, notch, notch, notch to their reputation, inclusivity and innovation. I don't want to be a silent witness to this, and I do not want to play this game. Don't get me wrong, what you see here is the opposite of someone who has chosen to give up. I really, really haven't. But I don't want to merely break the rules. I want to be amongst the ones who make the rules. I have done my fair share of disrupting. I want to construct, to build instead. Because if there is something that I have learned, is that it is absolutely true that small things can lead to very big things, but that very big things aren't necessarily better. I no longer believe in that reach, like the Who Made My Clothes one that I mentioned before. I don't think that being half seen or half heard by millions is more important than being fully understood by one. I believe that mine is a tactical retreat. And this is also the only militaristic expression that I use, for the lack of a better one, because I also refuse to avail myself of a language that sees us always at war, conquering and fighting battles, winning or losing. Intimate is powerful. After all, in fashion, we follow trends, and trends are nothing else but somebody doing something that works and others wanting to follow. Trends are about leading by example. And so I've come full circle. I started with my own clothes, and here I am again. Same clothes, same me, only we're both older, more valuable, because of our alterations, because of being repaired and restored and looked after and maintained, which is ultimately loved. My motto is, and my book is Loved Clothes Last for a reason. And I talk about repairs because fundamentally it is time to make repairs and reparations. It is time to alter our clothes, as it is time we alter the fashion system. The fashion industry has been deemed frivolous because of its primarily female association. But of course, we all know that an industry that employs millions of people, an industry that literally touches us all. Fashion may not, but apparel does. An industry with a social and environmental footprint as vast as ours has an obligation, not yet another commercial opportunity, an obligation to embrace sustainable and ethical practices throughout its supply chain, 360 degrees, no excuses. And yet, nothing, or if nothing, very little, anywhere near, not enough, nowhere near enough has changed. And everything, every notion, every bit of knowledge acquired is greenwashed from emerald to olive. And whether we scrutinize fast fashion or fast luxury, we see that uniform is the rule. Uniformity of product, uniformity of neglect. Supply chain professionals not salaried a fair wage despite the massive profits made by those at the top. Plastic everywhere, growth at all costs, despite the price we will all pay for these imbalances of power, for the loss of our finite resources, for the pain and the damage caused. I'm probably halfway through this intervention and I haven't told you anything new. And this is also a problem, that we keep convening amongst ourselves. And although the statistics and the innovation may vary slightly, the context is almost unchanged. Trust me, I am the OG, as in the original granny. And I have been in this space for a small forever. But let me tell you something that maybe you don't know, that it was much harder to put myself in front of a bunch of babies on TikTok than it was to tell the truth to countless CEOs and CFOs at the fashion conferences I speak at. Because ultimately, they are hearing bits of what I say just to be seen as applauding me. At the end of the day, they will hop on their private plane or chauffeur-driven car and go home to their beloved profits, while the kids will be left looking for their least frightening fear. And you probably don't know that for every single conversation that starts over a hole I have visibly mended or a t-shirt that looks upcycled, I feel more appreciated and powerful than I did addressing influencers or politicians. And maybe you also don't know that, because I've only just realized it, but looking at conventional success and redesigning those measurements for myself has been more important than being successful in the first place. And nothing gives me greater pleasure than having drawn a line nearer to my own place when it comes to ambition, and to pass the message on that we don't have to look for superstardom, because purpose is often way closer to home. We do not have to emulate what we are here to confront, an industry so vast and impregnable, an industry that deliberately designed itself to exclude and exploit. What we are here to do is to vigorously and rigorously create a new paradigm that considered unexplored attributes such as safety, softness, and kindness within an industry that is respectful and considerate of nature and all its creatures. And that includes us and each other. To me, from where I'm standing right now, care is the lens, the vehicle, the attitude and the attribute we need to make a strong start. Because I don't even think we have properly started, or if we did, if we have at some point, we're going backwards now. And in itself, a full start is no bad thing. In fact, if anything it is crucial to assimilate our mistakes, accept and communicate them in order to learn from them, which is why my new start is perhaps more humble, small and open-minded. And it starts with my clothes, their value and cost for me and everybody else. Because every time I sit there and mend a broken skirt, I'm showing my intentions. And every time someone admires my handiwork, I could potentially be creating a clone, someone else who with intention will radically slow down the system. You say it's just one skirt. I say it's the first wheel ever invented. For every emerging talent who we help to bring to market, just like a tiny sapling in a forest of giants struggling to see the light, we are creating the radical opposition we need to rebalance this world made of giants. And by the way, I am using the word radical as what it means, with roots. I mean radical as in profound. To make profound changes, we need to listen to nature, not to act in defiance of it. And its natural laws are clear once you observe them. Nature doesn't grow just for the sake of growth. Nature replicates when something is successful. Nature thrives in cooperation. Our bodies are made of trillions of cells, but each one depends on the other. These are universal truths that we have done everything in our power to ignore. And this is why I am retracting decades of my own steps, which were made following one logic, the one logic that seems to be worthy of respect, the logic of more, of faster, better, louder, bigger, linear, for the contra logic of little, zigzag, whispered, inconclusive, and uncertain. The meaning of our own clothes is deeper than we think. Maintaining and reusing may be less sexy than glossy and new, although let's define sexy post Me Too. But secondhand is the only competitor that fast fashion has ever had. Now, just imagine for 1 nanosecond if we had invested 10% of the millions that were invested into chemical recycling, into upcycling instead. Visualize the innovators in their labs looking for a solution. What do they need apart from money and a few square meters of fabric to experiment on? Now visualize instead all that money going into creating efficient and groundbreaking people-led systems to collect wastes. The skills taught and needed to put it back into circulation as viable products. The benefits to our soil and communities, which are not overwhelmed with unwanted crap, but instead a part of the interruption and reevaluation of that waste. Imagine, just imagine. I value, therefore I am. The value in our clothes is such that we could go on reusing and refusing what we already have. They say for 6 generations. Well then, let's teach those skills as a priority to citizens, so that instead of buying less and buying better, how many times have you heard buy less and buy better? They buy less and keep better. Let's teach those skills to small communities so that sharing and rewearing becomes a badge of pride rather than a stigma of poverty. Let's teach those disassembly and reassembly skills to garment workers, which would also possibly make that daily work less monotonous and, who knows, purposeful even. Let's recuperate at every step of the supply chain, from mills to manufacturers, and what is here already on par with innovative, sustainable materials as a sustainable resource. Let's reuse artisanally and industrially as a transitional alternative until technology will save us. I've said this a million times, so 1,000,001 won't hurt, but the most sustainable garment is the one we have already. In my case, it's in my wardrobe, and that's where I'm starting again from. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Orsola, as always. I think you're a phenomenal orator and an amazing activist at your absolute core, and I'm absolutely proud to know you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you just quickly, because we do have a few minutes, I know you just came straight from Morocco, right? And it was a UNIDO project. What were you doing there? Can you tell us just
My favorite thing in the world, fiddling with machines while being knee-deep in waste. Now, honestly, Morocco is not famed for a fashion hub or a creative fashion hub. This was a very, very technical school, and I had the deep honor to teach a bunch of kids how to upcycle for a project that will be then showcased at White Milan in February. And it's so exciting when you see the level of understanding, of immediate identification, the sense of irreverence and yet importance of teaching the technique of reusing, how far one can go with just a slightly broken jacket. And it is empowering because it's no judgment on the design. It's a skill, it's a technique, it's useful, it's endemic to humanity. I mean, the second we learned how to make, we probably also learned how to mend and how to reuse. So it felt really empowering all round to be there and just to bring this technique to another community and school.
Fabulous. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're probably tired from your travels, so and just
Never tired for you, Sas.
my darling. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Very lovely.